It's a common scene in contemporary life. Someone posts something on Facebook, and then someone else comes out and calls them out over it, or you're standing there with a sign demonstrating and someone gestures to you with their middle finger. It's a common scene. And the next person that changes their mind based upon a Facebook post might be the first one. I don't know. Maybe that's just a statement about me and how resistant to change I am. It's hard to know how to speak about important but difficult or divisive things. I think the right place to speak about it is not in a short little burst on Facebook with a witty zinger to make your point, but that's just an opinion. I could easily be wrong on that. How do we engage others? The way of wisdom, as Proverbs define it, is to orient our lives unto the Lord. And Proverbs itself says that begins with the heart, that begins with our own individual inclinations toward the Lord or away from him. Proverbs 9:7-9 says, whoever corrects a scoffer, one who is resistant, one who's arrogantly rejecting something, whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse. We've probably all received that, right? And he who reproves or corrects in a sense of teaching correction, he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. So you try to help and correct and lead someone into right understanding. If that person is wicked, then you get an injury in return. It says, do not reprove a scoffer or he will hate you. And then it turns, reprove a wise man and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man and he will increase in learning. This is not a devotion thinking about how you ought to have a specific social media policy or how you ought to have those crucial conversations with a family member. I want to actually look at this passage as a mirror for me, as a mirror for you. Which one looks more like me? Am I in wisdom and in softness before the Lord? Am I ready to hear rebuke and correction? Sometimes I am. Sometimes I'm not. Do I seek to hurt those who would correct me? Do I seek to reject them or mock them or abuse them in return? What's the orientation of our hearts? Because it shows very clearly, if our lives are full of wisdom, they are oriented toward the Lord, and the Lord's heart is to grow us. The Lord's heart is for us to increase in learning, not just data or information, but to increase in learning how to live before him in such a way that brings him glory and brings us greater peace, regardless of what's happening in the world around us. Which one of these looks more like you? Which one of them looks more like me? Are we wise or are we scoffers? Is the way that we communicate with those who question us or confront us, what does that show about us? Do we resist? Do we counterattack? That's not God. That's not the gospel. That's not the truth about me or you. What happens in your heart when you're corrected? Even if you don't overtly, outwardly scoff or injure or attack or abuse in return for the correction or reproof you got. Even if you don't do that outwardly, what's happening in your heart? Are you justifying yourself? Are you going back to your own tribe where you rehearse how you were right all along? Is that wisdom? What's happening in our hearts? If our goal in our lives is to orient ourselves unto the Lord, then how shall we respond to correction? Alternately, is our goal in life to orient the Lord and his word to our lives? That's what a scoffer does. I want to find justification for me, and I'll orient the Lord around me as opposed to me unto the Lord. Proverbs is the way of wisdom, and wisdom is to shape our lives by the character, heart, values, and truth of the Lord our God and our Savior Jesus Christ. What shall we do when we are corrected? How shall we correct others? In what spirit shall we correct others? And how shall we trust the Lord in those things? I don't have all the answers for you, but I do have the question. How shall we seek wisdom in receiving correction and reproof? And how shall we offer wisdom to others in a way that is humble in a way that leads them unto the Lord, trusting Him for that work. Bless you today.